everybody. Welcome to our next video in the series that we're looking at. We've already looked at the fact that God, the Bible claims, is good. That is not the way we may describe good, more good than bad, or even in essence good, though with an occasional slip-up. It means 100 out of 100, always good. Then we had a look to see if we had any evidence to back that significant claim up. We considered that the best evidence we have is to look at the person of Jesus Christ. He is God himself and came to live in this world as a human as well as being God. And one of the goals of why he lived here was to show us what the invisible Spirit God is like. He put on humanness to allow us to see God himself. He showed us just by how he lived that God is good. Perhaps we have to have a look at what we mean by good, though, so let's do that this time. An example will help us understand perhaps what it is not. Let's just consider a family who have 2 young children. It's the norm that the parents will try to do the best that they can for the kids, and may very well think of themselves as being good parents. Now, that may not be the view of their kids, of course. The kids are expected to eat their green veg, which they may detest. They would prefer to eat just their favourite sweets. They're expected to go to bed early enough so that they get enough sleep to be ready to go to school the next morning. And at times they may have a favourite toy withdrawn from them in order to apply discipline for some misdemeanour that they've been involved in. So, if questioned, are your parents good? They may not be positive about it. These parents may, for the good of the household budget, decide to take the family on holiday when things are cheaper during school term time. The local education authority would not view those parents as good, as their belief is that kids should go to school every day it is open. In fact, it is the law. Some of the relations of the family may not think they're good parents either, as the children are not encouraged to express their thanks in writing for gifts given for birthdays and so on, and those relations were always made to do that when they were growing up. They see it as good for the kids. Some of the issues that we're talking about are right. For example, going to bed to get enough sleep. Others are seen to be sensible practice, learning gratitude, but it all adds up to be a subjective view on what good means. There are some things that are clear though from our simple example. Not all the views of what is good can be correct in an absolute sense. The definition of good can't depend on how you or I view things, as that has our own bias included. If we want to understand what we mean by God being good, there has to be an absolute standard. It cannot just be my own view, or even a consensus view. I cannot tweak God's character to suit what I think is good. He would not be worthy of the name God if I could do that. If it was left to just one point of view, say the children's view of good, then we would never reach maturity, as we'd all be happy being children, and we know that's not feasible. A balanced childhood is important as we look to become adults. Eating sweets all the time, going to bed super late would not be a basis for adulthood, and might even preclude us from getting there because of health reasons that we suffered because of the way we lived our lives. Another thing, some difficult things will inevitably happen where the views of what is good do not align. For example, some parents are very light on disciplining their children and would consider that good. Others may be more even-handed or heavy-handed. Discipline is necessary to protect and deliver good outcomes. Without any discipline for bad behaviour, we'd be living in anarchy, and no society can survive like that. A fourth point is that good cannot mean everybody can just do as they see as good. Selfish views cause issues where there is a lack of consideration for others. Just drive around the local roads and see the litter there that is thrown out of cars. Some people, hopefully still only a minority think that that is good behaviour. It has its costs though, even if it is just having to employ people to pick it up, that every person ends up contributing to the cost of. And then good is not even the difference between right and wrong. Good is a characteristic. As far as it is being a characteristic of God, He does good things, and they are things that can be appreciated and experienced, so that may help us with the concept of what we mean by God is good. We must get away from it being subjective. Children may struggle with how their parents act, but adults ought to understand the role of parents is to do good to the children, good even when it may not suit the children's own ideas. Much time is spent in childhood explaining to children the answers to their why and why not questions. They can't just have what they think is good. Jesus, who we saw in the last video showed God's goodness, was certainly not willing to accept everything that was taking place around him. He challenged the hypocrisy he found in the Jewish religious leaders. For them, it was all about their outward show and their own self-righteous feelings about their behaviour, whilst being very judgmental of others. There was no heartfelt devotion to God. So in fact, they were breaking the very first of the 10 commandments God gave to live by, to love God with everything you have. What was their response to Jesus' calling them out? Well, eventually it was to crucify this innocent man. They thought they were good, but God's own goodness became a victim of their human badness. Being good does not mean turning a blind eye to wrong things being done. We can also see in our example we looked at that there are laws in place which should be honoured for the common good. We live in a democracy where these laws are put in place for good, so breaking them is not good behaviour. God has laws which are intended to help us live good lives. Take God's second law, the law about loving your neighbour as yourself. It really means taking care of others as you would wish to be taken care of yourself. Now, behind that law you can see that there is obviously good intended. If we all acted in that way, there would be no problems in our world between people, and therefore between nations either. Jesus was actually asked, "Who is my neighbour?" His answer was to tell the story of the Good Samaritan, illustrating that it is anybody in need. Of course, none of us are that unselfish. All of us fail to carry that out to a lesser or greater extent. You only have to watch the news on any day to see plenty of examples of the impact of not doing so. Some terrible things happen. And a realistic look inside myself shows that I am guilty of it. Just think about one small example. Take the laws of motoring. They are for our general protection, such as the requirement to be insured. One reason is that it means others are protected if I have an accident, which is why third-party insurance is a legal requirement. There is also a highway code, which is a good practice guide, such as using your indicators when intending to turn. Can I upset other road users when I fail to indicate? Of course I can. Is that good of me to do that? Of course not. And we all know that. How have we worked that out? Because the guidance is there for everyone's protection, for the common good. Flaunting it can create even bigger issues. Accidents, for example, road rage, and so on. We are not showing the same care to others that we would expect, or even that we give to ourselves. We are being selfish. Now, of course, God did spell things out a bit more in some detail in other laws. This would not have been necessary if we had been able to live in a selfless way, caring for others, and that doesn't mean just family or friends. It means any and everyone as much as we do for ourselves all the time. The extra laws are things like do not steal, do not murder. If we cared for everyone else, there would be no robbery. What a good world that would be. Actually, reality shows we're all so fundamentally flawed. What these good laws do is highlight for us our own failure to do good. Maybe we have never stolen anything, or haven't committed murder, or even wished anyone else dead. Though Jesus does say the thought is bad, like the action is. Always being truthful might be a bit more of a challenge. No lies, no half-truths. One part in the Bible, in a letter written to Christians in a church at Rome, where Nero eventually murdered so many of them, the letter says in modern English, "It's clear enough, isn't it? Every one of us is in the same sinking boat with everybody else. There's no comfort in being in that boat, even if everyone else is there. It is sinking." The law, it says, actually points out our failures. If God is good, what is He doing about that? We will look at that in more detail in a later video. But let's just get to the quick answer. Children in Jam Club know that a good answer to any question is Jesus. And that is the answer this time. That's what God has done about it. Jesus did live according to that law, truly loving his neighbour as himself. How do we know? Because he chose to die, so you and I could have this issue dealt with. Could there be anything better than that? Some good news, some great news in these difficult times, potentially being rescued from the sinking ship that we're all in. I say potentially, as being rescued is optional. It's your choice. We will return to this in a later video. But if you want to know more before that, please do get in touch via the Facebook page of the church. Next time we will look at why bad things exist. What has gone wrong with the good creation that God started out with? Thank you.